the compassionate, Her Excellency Annalena Baerbock, President of the General Assembly, His Excellency Antonio Guterres, Secretary General of the United Nations, Your Excellencies, Highnesses, and Heads of Delegations, may the mercy and blessings of God be upon you. I speak to you today after almost 2 years in which our Palestinian people in the Gaza Strip have been facing a war of genocide, destruction, starvation, and displacement waged by the Israeli occupation forces, in which they killed and injured more than 220,000 Palestinians, the majority of whom are unarmed children, women, and the elderly. A war in which they displaced hundreds of thousands and prevented the Haitian army. Furthermore, the Islamic and Christian religious sites in Jerusalem, Hebron, and Gaza Strip have not been spared the attacks which have damaged the mosques, churches, and cemeteries in a blatant violation of the historic status quo and in a clear violation of the provisions of the international law. Despite all what our people have suffered, we reject what Hamas carried out on the 7th of October. These actions that targeted Israeli civilians and took them hostages, because these actions do not represent the Palestinian people, nor do they represent their just struggle for freedom and independence. We have affirmed, and we will continue to affirm, that the Gaza Strip is an integral part of the State of Palestine, and that we are ready to bear full responsibility for governance and security there. Hamas will not have a role to. Ladies and gentlemen, our wounds are deep and our calamity is great. 7 million Palestinians are still living the tragedies of the Nakba and displacement since 1948. Our people in the West Bank, including East Jerusalem, and in the Gaza Strip, are still living the tragedies of the Israeli aggression and occupation for decades. Years that our people have spent under occupation, killing, arrests, and settlement, and the theft of money, property, and lands. And this still continues without to put an end to this historic conflict by recognizing the state of Palestine, ending the occupation, and returning hope to both the Palestinian and Israeli people. And here I would like to, on behalf of the Palestinian people, to express our gratitude and appreciation to all the states that recently recognized the state of Palestine and those that intend to recognize the state of Palestine soon. We urge all the states that have not done so yet to recognize the state of Palestine. We call on supporting Palestine obtaining full membership in the United Nations. It should be noted that we have already recognized Israel's right to exist. We would also like to commend the role of the chairmanship of this conference, the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia and France, and also the United Kingdom. We would also like to thank all the states that headed the various working groups and those which participated and continue to participate in the International Alliance for Peace. We would also like to thank the states that are supporting our efforts to stop the genocide and the occupation.
In the name of God, most gracious, most merciful. My statement today will be entitled, For Yemen, for the World. Your Majesties, Your Excellencies, Your Highnesses, Madam President of the General Assembly of the United Nations, Mr. Secretary General, ladies and gentlemen, distinguished delegates. I would first like to offer Madam Annalena Baerbock and her friendly country, the Federal Republic of Germany, I'd like to offer them our sincere congratulations on her election as President of the United Nations General Assembly. I wish her success in leading this session, which we attach great importance to as under the slogan, Better Together for Peace, Development and Human Rights. I would also like to commend the efforts of the Secretary General of the United Nations, Mr. Antonio Guterres. We look forward to working with these two leaders of the United Nations to champion peace and human rights in Yemen.